it amazes me as I go around the country and speak to different groups. You know, I learn, just so you all understand, I typically get 1 or 2 takeaways from you when I go to each group. So your questions to me are really helpful because they help me frame in my mind what works. And you know, it doesn't. Someone asked me before, after the break, they came up and they said, "Oh, are there any surprise questions? You hear anything you haven't heard before?" And Fletch and I were going, "No, no. I mean, realtordom is realtordom, and it's the land of the same. I mean, a board of realtors here is just like you know, California or Florida or Wisconsin, where I was from, and we all have the same passion and belief, and the realtors have the same passion and belief, and they just want to get it done. So before we switch gears on the grants, what I find sometimes after lunch, you've had a chance to talk a little. Was there any little moving pieces from this morning yet that need to be sort of just settled in? Because at the end of the day, maybe we'll get Fletch back up here again or whatever, and maybe you could take some collective action about what you want to do, Ohio, from here on out. But anything that's still sort of remaining from this morning that you just couldn't put back together, Sandy?
Well, we're just wondering, I guess it's more of a political question, a NAR political question. If a board of realtors submits for a grant in 2 different areas, do you compete with yourself at all? In other words, should we plan our timing? Because we've got 2 that we want to apply for, and I could stagger it, but is it even necessary?
Well, are they within the same program?
No, one's a housing program, would be the housing grant, and one would be an RPAC grant.
No, you're just competing with everybody else.
Okay.
So no, you're
So
not
there's
competing
no
with
reason to be strategic about when you apply
No.
as a board. Okay, thank you.
And
based
one
on when your program
one is
is.
simply a staff approval, which is the RPAC grant, and the other one, depending on what it is, may be staff or maybe a small committee that's tied to a date.
Thank you.
Everybody get that? Meaning, the only exception to the rule, I'm going to give you a little twist on her question. Meredith's going to talk to you about community grants. If you came in with 5 community grants all at one time, I'm not sure you'd get all 5. I mean, again, the people that make the decisions, the realtors, like we were talking earlier this morning, if I were to turn to Sandy, because she's smiling, and I said, Sandy, you're on the committee and XYZ board came in with 5 of them, my guess is you wouldn't give them all 5.
I think you're right.
Yeah, because we got to spread it around, you only have so much money. So it's a great question, it's a strategic question. So we're gonna shift gears, and what I'd like you to do, and then we'll get Meredith up here, I'd like you to get the menu back out again, which is the 1-page menu of services and tools. And we're gonna go over on the other side where it says community involvement and outreach. And I can tell Meredith wants me to work the machine, which I probably won't do very well. Thing, but I'll try. But we're going to go over the community grants, and again, this is part of the $40, but it's just not new stuff. Some of it you've already done, because I can see on a list, but there's tremendous possibilities here for you this year to get some really good money back to your board without dealing with some of the campaign stuff. So Meredith, why don't you come on up and give us an overview.
All right, well, the first thing is a date that you need to keep in mind, and that's February 29th. It's the leap year, next Wednesday, I think it is. That's the first deadline for all the grants that you want to apply for as far as diversity, housing opportunity, and smart growth. And I'll go into what all the details are, but that's the first deadline, and approval is about within a month of it. The next deadline is not until May 31st, so just for your planning purposes, just kind of keep that in your head. The next one is August 31st, and then the last one is November 2nd. And these used to be, for those of you who've applied for them before, remember there was a deadline in April and there was a deadline in October. They changed that. Part of it because a lot of people, when they were trying to do things, the timing just didn't fit in. And if you wanted to do something in the spring, you didn't necessarily know what you wanted to do in October, and that was when you would have had to apply for it. So February 29th, and that's the first deadline this year. So if you're thinking about doing anything within the next week, call me within the next couple of days, and sort of let me know what you're thinking about, and we can get the ball rolling. We were in New York and New Jersey last week, and we have a whole bunch that are now all going in from there. And we have a feeling we're going to see it, we're hoping, I should say, we're going to see a lot of them. So if there is something you're thinking about doing this spring, even if it's in May, I would probably apply for it now, or I would suggest that you apply for it now. So just keep that in the back of your head, is February 29th. That is for then the three that we're going to go through first, and then we're going to talk about, I think, after issues mobilization and how that works with some of those grants and some of the archive fundraising grants. But for now, the first one is diversity. There are several different diversity programs. One of the big things is the diversity grant. And just so you know, there are a couple of you, and I'm going to actually single you out, who who have done it. Okay, who's from Dayton? Where are you? You guys know you did a diversity grant last year. Let's start that. Okay, what I'm going to ask, and the reason why I'm calling them, and those of you who've done housing opportunity, because it's good to hear what other people have done in your state and how they sort of used the money. The grant is up to $5,000. Doesn't mean you have to apply for $5,000, although I will tell you, sometimes it's better to apply for more, and you may get less depending on how many people apply for it. If you guys don't mind, can you try to tell everybody, I mean, this was last year, all I have here is to support a fair housing event that will bring members together from a diverse community to provide members with an insight into current trends in fair housing. I think it'd just be helpful for people to kind of hear what you've done.
We do a luncheon every year celebrating Fair Housing Month, and we give out awards for different people in the community. We bring the fair housing people together, we bring the realtors together.
And everybody here?
And it's been a very successful event. It's something that's been growing every year.
And we provide continuing education classes during that event as well that are focused on civil rights law and various fair housing issues.
And here's the key thing. So you guys got $5,000. How did you spend the $5,000, and how difficult did you think it was to fill out the grant application?
Well, neither of us filled
You
out.
can be honest.
Neither of us filled out the grant application. That was done by someone else on staff. And they seemed to think that it wasn't that difficult. But there appears to be a little bit of voodoo about it.
Okay.
At least there seems to be from our directors. And I'm sorry, what was the other part?
How did you use, I mean, you got $5,000, so you got the maximum grant. What did you use? I mean, did you
We
pay for
used
food,
it
a facility?
For speakers, for facilities, for food, we used it for very many things.
And did you bring in any speakers? Did you have to pay for the cost of the speaker as well?
Yes.
So that's just to give you an idea with diversity. That's one example of one way of using it. I'm going to call Gavin because we did one that I worked with him on 2 years ago, I think it was now. It wasn't 2011, it was 2011. We did a diversity grant last year for the Columbus board, and we actually used it for a candidate school before NAR created their candidate school. So
Yeah, we created a candidate school where we brought in speakers to teach realtors to potentially how to run for office. Every area of running for office, whether it be messaging to the effectiveness, how to do it. We steered around promoting it through for minority candidates, and other people applied as well. It wasn't just minority candidates, but we worked it through that diversity grant to do this. So it just gave people an option to figure out how to run for office to get more realtors interested in doing so.
just the two completely different type of ways, and the diversity, I mean, a lot of it is you can do things with the Women's Council of Realtors, which I'm assuming you have. If you have other types of minority organizations, if you want to do something regarding bringing up leadership within your group, within, more leaders within the board, there are other ways you can do other types of classes focusing on fair housing. I'll just give you a couple other examples. So in Arizona, they've done ones regarding a multicultural housing summit. So, and they actually didn't apply for housing opportunity grants, they did it through diversity grant. And some of this you'll see, some of them do overlap, where they brought in from all different cultures to talk about all different ways. There are groups that have international societies that have had in the DC area, we're obviously close to the embassies, and they've done a lot of things partnering with embassies and done grants that way, and talking about some of the international markets, just for people who are interested in learning about housing in other parts of the world. Other examples that they've done, one group actually in New Jersey has a diversity recognition program, and they use $5,000 to fund the program throughout the year and doing several different events throughout the year. So they applied for that early in the year. So that's just a couple of examples. I mean, the diversity grant is probably one of the easiest ones, and probably one of the most underutilized ones. The NAR staff will tell you who works on this is amazing, and if you just have thoughts and ideas, and now you have me too, who've gone through some of it, but just things, hey, I'm not sure if this fits in, we can talk about it. Can you actually click on the application form? I just want people to see, it's not, the hardest thing for all the grants that most people feel and their eyes kind of start glazing over is when you get to the budget. It's not that complicated. One, there are tons of examples out there as to how to do the budget, and it's fairly easy to kind of go through it. Oh wow, it's small.
Yeah.
But basically, I mean, it's, a lot of the question, what is the purpose of the grant? Describe the activity. Where are you having it? Why is it important to realtors? That's usually one of the biggest questions on all of it. What sort of public policy type of will this work with the association? So there's a couple of ways of doing it. Yeah.
Just going back to Dayton doing this, we did it last year, we're putting in for another grant this year. And for anyone in the room who knows Nick Competent, our Director of Education in Dayton, he's the one who fills this format for us, he's the one who does the budget, and I'm sure he would be happy to assist you if you have any questions on how to do the budget. So that you can talk to someone that may do that.
Yeah.
So the question I have is, can you use these grants to completely fund a project, or does NAR expect the local boards to match the funds?
Yes and no, which I know is not the answer you want to hear. They'd like to see some sort of local contribution. Now, if you're a local board that really has no funds to be able to do any of it, and $5,000 has to go all towards it, one example that I tell people that you can do is show in the budget, and it wouldn't be necessarily part of the $5,000, but what an in-kind contribution of staff time would cost. So the staff that is spending on it. If you have some money to put towards it, even if it's a couple $100s, to say you're going to pay for the badges or whatever it is, add that in. They like to see some sort of involvement from the association. Monetarily, yes, if you have some money, I would say put some of it towards it if you can. If not, then put in there, and put in the application. We just do not have anything in the budget for this, but here's the staff time that we're putting towards it, and this is the approximate amount of dollars that it would be. So, that has worked, especially for, you're talking about a lot of smaller local boards, that has worked very well across the country, and they've been very receptive to that. So, or, this is what our classroom, we are holding it in our offices, so we don't have to pay for a location. We have classroom space or whatever it is. So there are a couple ways of doing it. Does anybody else have a question on that? So the other two things, just from diversity regarding the grant. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I can't see her.
No problem. In Swisher, I'm on staff here.
Yeah.
I had the privilege of serving 5 years with that application process for those grants.
You said on the committee? Oh, great.
And so everything that you said, it's very, very important for you to be able to really state how you're going to be doing that. And you're right on target in terms of saying the contribution from the local association, however that may be measured, is very, very important to the reviewing staff.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's just an experience that I share with you over that time.
So what she's actually talking about is, so for each of the different grants, there are different committees at NAR that review it. This is I think it's called the Equal Opportunity Committee now. They've changed names so many times, but the Equal Opportunity Committee, they meet several times. Now that they used to meet twice a year at the mid-year meetings and at the annual meetings. Now that the applications are 4 times, they're doing different conference calls as well. It's not a conference call you'd have to be on. Grants you do not have to, unless there are some really outrageous questions or anything, but the NAR staff will work with you. They'll present it, and that's why it's so important on the application that you can be as detailed as possible, because they're reviewing it. It's also important that let me kind of work with you through it too, because I've been through it. I work with the NAR staff, and between myself and the NAR staff, we'll make sure that most of the questions are answered, so by the time it gets to the committee, they don't have any more for you. So that's also, a key thing. So thank you. Yeah.
Is there, I can envision for us, because we've been talking about doing something targeting the veterans for fair housing, and bringing in some experts. And we have limited the funds to put on events, and I can see us doing something where this could cover the room, the food, pay for somebody to teach a fair housing class to get credit, and then our government veteran speakers. But if we treated this also as an income-producing event for our education committee, because it would be CE built into it, charge the nominal fee, like $10 to attend. Is that a
Yes.
problem?
Nope.
Okay.
Not at all. Not for any of them. I mean, matter of fact, a lot of these, especially when you're doing CE classes or if you're doing a luncheon, you put in the budget, you're charging X amount of dollars. Okay. Yeah, that's not a problem. Yeah.
Having sat on these committees, smart growth and affordable housing, and I've reviewed these applications, don't stress the food, guys.
Yeah.
I mean.
Don't say you're spending $3,000 on food.
Yeah, you really need to show materials you're gonna distribute, different kinds of ways that you can interact. If you have panels of experts coming in, and even if those folks are giving in-kind service so that you don't have to pay them a fee, you can still use that as part of your contribution as a board.
Anybody else? Just two other things, actually you can go back. Two other things with diversity that I just want to make sure you understand. NAR also has, and at no cost to you, they will help you put on a 3-hour diversity workshop. And there's an NAR staffer who can come in and work with you on it. So if you just are interested in anything in the diversity field, and whether it's within your leadership or expanding home ownership to other minority communities, there's a variety of ways of doing it. That's another thing, and it's just another way. It is no cost. You don't even have to apply for a grant application, but it's a workshop that they can come and help you put on at your association too. So that's another, and that's, again, the $40, that has gone to help fund a lot of these, so that NAR has the opportunity to do more of these type of programs across the country. So that's everything with diversity, unless anybody has a question. Some of these we'll go through it fairly quick. Okay. Go to housing opportunity. Okay, housing opportunity. The next one. Same thing, same deadlines as I just said before. So the first one is February 29th. The biggest thing that most people do with housing opportunity are housing fairs. Has anybody here actually done a housing fair at the local board? Have you gotten a housing opportunity grant for it?
Yes.
Good. And actually,
We had a DVD that we produced from it, and it was on the national website, so people could go in and look at it.
you are making my job so easy up here. Okay, I'm going to totally botch this county's name. It's with a P. Portage? Did I say it right? I always apologize in advance. So you guys got a $2,500 grant last year, and it worked with restoring fire damaged and abandoned homes to provide housing for homeless female veterans. Do you mind just kind of telling everybody what you did with it?
We were actually approached by the Community Services Agency in our county. They were working on a project. They had a home donated that was burned out and needed to be revamped. And they looked to revamp it for a transitional housing for female veterans that were in transition and homeless. We have 2 other facilities in our area that are geared towards male veterans. And female veterans are the biggest number of homeless veterans right now. There's no other facility like this in our area. They approached us about helping out with the projects, and some of the funds are being used towards, we took on the task of refurbishing the kitchen. And we're also using education programs for not only the veterans of the female veterans homeless Liberty House, but the other veterans in the area, what they can do to start to use that first home.
Great. And did the realtors, in your area, were they happy with it, I assume?
We started the program with doing, asking for donations through our membership. We had a good number of our membership donor funds towards that, and most of the board seems to be really excited about it. So.
Now, did you guys apply for $5,000 and only get $2,500?
Yeah, and it had to do with the number. There was a large number of grants. So.
Well, and so that's the thing. So with housing opportunity, there are actually 2 levels of grants. Diversity, there's only 1, and when we get to smart growth, there's actually 3 levels. With housing opportunity, there are 2 levels. The first level is a level 1, and it is up to $1,000, and it's actually to hold in one of the employer-assisted housing classes, what they call EAH, or to do an expanding housing opportunities class. These are 2 classes that NAR has created. They have the staff that can come in and work with you on it, and the grant is up to $1,000 to work with the association for it. So it's a really easy thing. It's probably one of the simplest grants out there. And that one is actually the only one that's accepted on a rolling basis, just so you know. So that one doesn't actually apply to that February 29th deadline. Yep. Okay. So now level two is the one that's up to $5,000, and that's the one where it is the February 29th deadline is the first one, and that's the one that a lot of people do housing fairs. And actually, I'm gonna have, I think, Megan, didn't you guys do one in Toledo? I have one here. Oh, she left. She left the room. Sorry. Okay, then who's here from Stark County? Oh, hi.
Hi. We did 2 grants. The first one, they're both housing out. We did one with kind of did a fair foreclosure prevention fair, and we ended up partnering. We worked with the city of Canton. We also partnered with the district library and got bookmarks, make bookmarks, and the libraries about we call it the United Ways 211 number is what basically they promoted. So doing all the district library branches. That's what we did with our grant. And the second one, we also partnered with a community organization to just have the realtors work with the organization to get housing opportunities for the community members that needed help.
And why was it $2,750 for one of them? Was there a specific
funding? No, it was just we did the 5,000, but it was whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so you understand, that's why I say apply up to 5,000. You may not get 5,000. It really depends on what the program is. It depends on how detailed it is. I can give you other examples besides just doing a housing fair. There are ways where you can do things. There are associations who have taken federal housing programs, state housing programs, and if you have any local housing programs, and put them all together in one place, created a flyer, put it on a website for realtors to access to hand out to potential home buyers, $1,500 the association got just to pay for some of the web services and to pay for the printing costs, and created this nice pretty brochure that put all of the housing programs together to hand out for realtors to use and for a home buyer. Pass out to home buyers. So there can be a wide variety of things. This is probably, and Bill was saying this is a great way to show to your members what you are doing, how you're getting money back from NAR. You are out there in the communities, and one of the best ways to get a whole public policy element to it, and with your elected officials, invite them. Have them come talk. Have the housing director come talk at a housing fair. Bring in lenders, have them come talk about financial stuff. You're bringing everybody into one room, and you're focusing on sort of that whole home ownership aspect. Yeah.
Can you apply for more than one of those grants per year? For instance, maybe if you only get $2,500 in the spring, if you have something else that comes up in the summer or fall, can you apply for additional?
You can apply more than once. Yes. I would caution against applying February 29th and then May 31st, and then for several of them. I mean, it's better to kind of spread it out and really build on it. But yes, you can absolutely. Yeah.
And the EAH $1,000, can you do that more than once in a year?
I believe so. I mean, it's accepted on a rolling basis because it's for a class. So, I mean, it just depends on Wendy's schedule, really.
Association, we only spend one.
Is it only once?
Volunteer.
Okay.
We have an first question.
You do. We already have it. Okay. Well, and actually there is, so that's a good point. There is a list actually on, and I don't know, I'm not sure where it is on here, and Wendy Penn, who is the staff director at NAR, she can tell you where there are certified teachers throughout the country. Some, if you have ones in Ohio, sometimes they're just close to your state. They may be in a bordering state. And actually, I used to teach one of the classes years ago. So there are ways that there are several of us throughout the country that are certified that can come in and teach it. And $1,000 is to help put on any association costs you have, registration fees, all those kind of things. Megan, you left when I called on you. So Toledo they actually did a 2-day event focusing on affordable housing, and they actually got a $3,000 grant.
You did?
Did you not know that?
No, I did. I wrote it myself. I've been here like 3 months and wrote it. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't any big, I have a grant right there, but I think the hardest part about it is putting the ideas on paper. But I mean, there's nothing complicated about doing it, right?
And how was the event? I mean, that's what
I'll let you know in a few weeks.
Oh,
It's
you haven't
April
had it
28th,
yet. Okay.
29th. It got postponed. So it's coming up here in a few weeks.
So make sure you ask Megan in a few weeks. Everybody send her a message to find out, what. So for housing opportunity, I mean, the biggest thing is, you want to focus on affordable housing issues. You want to focus on, do you guys have do Section 8 stuff here, a lot of it? Okay, doing classes on Section 8. Housing fair, housing fair, housing fair. That's the one thing I always push with a lot of people. And it's probably one of the easiest things, again, to do, and invite your electeds. Also, if you have at your in your different local communities and stuff, if you have nonprofits that are working on different housing projects, now I'm not talking about doing a habitat build or rebuilding together or whatever, any of those type of projects. You can't use any of the money to fund that. That is something completely separate, and that's actually a big request that used to come in a lot. We're doing a habitat build. Can we have $5,000 to go towards it? You can't use it for that. But you can partner with a nonprofit that may be doing housing counseling. If you have realtors that are trained to do that and you want to put on a housing counseling class within your association, that's another great way to do it. So if you want other examples, I can give you other examples, but that's just, sort of the short and sweet of it. And again, up to $5,000, and it's a really easy way. The application is not hard, and it's a great way to kind of get your members involved. So I'm sure usually what happens is after I start saying this, and that's why I also point out the examples of what people have done here in Ohio. As your brain is sort of floating around going, oh my God, I'm not sure what I would do stuff, I can guarantee something that you've probably done over the past couple of years, you could have gotten money from NAR for and had no idea you could. So if any of you have any ideas that you're thinking now, we can talk after too. But my job really is to kind of guide you through this process. If you have ideas, to tell you how to sort of put it onto paper and then really how to help get it implemented. The staff at NAR, again, we have lots of examples, and we're working on getting the examples on the website so that you can kind of see, so you don't just hear me keep rattling them off here. And once that's up, we'll make sure that we let you know. But I'll just give you a couple of other quick little other examples that you can see. So for the West Georgia Board of Realtors in Georgia, they actually did $5,000. They did 4 events throughout the year. And the 4 events, one of them was called Save a Home Seminar. They did a pre-purchase workshop, a loss mitigation event, and then they did a realtor training event. And the realtor training event was focused on how to deal with current and future homeowners. And they were dealing with a lot of foreclosure issues down in that area. And they were trying to refocus on working with new buyers or trying to keep people in their homes. So they did a series of 4 workshops throughout the year. So it doesn't just have to be one big event either. It can be for a series of events. It could be for a series of education classes that you've created on your own outside of not just that $1,000 grant. You could do something on your own on several types of homeownership classes. I'm just sort of throwing out ideas of things that you guys can do.
Just a couple tips, because Sandra, you asked in the beginning, you said you wanted sort of form and function. This is the one where if you have a PR committee, community revitalization committee, a housing committee, any type of committee within the board that looks at community relationships, this is the committee that should be looking at this type of functionality. It is very broad-based. If there's a commercial overlay board, we're not skipping out on you guys either. It could maybe have a little more of an economic development, but we're struggling a little on that one because it's a little harder for the sort of housing base. But the point is that there's 4 dates. The form isn't that difficult. And then the last one that always comes up is, I don't have a big enough staff. This is great, but whatever. And what the response back is, you probably can find, as I heard before, a nonprofit or maybe a chamber or another group in the community where you say, if I bring the money, you got the staff to do the work. We just want to co-brand it. So you may want to look at co-branding a program. As long as your president is at the press conference or on the news release, fine. You bring the money. Maybe they do the labor to put it together. So it's an opportunity for you to take the program. And I think where it's coming from is if you took a diversity grant of $2,500 to $5,000, you took a housing opportunity grant. There's anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 of money that can come back to the board. The biggest obstacle we find is typically the labor. You don't have the time to do it, and you just have to get creative in your community and see if you can find a partner.
And one of the things that the committee, when they're reviewing the applications, they're looking for realtor involvement. So what Bill's talking, if you have a community service committee or even your legislative committee, a lot of people, if you have a local legislative committee that are very active in the community, have them help you plan, the event, have them be some of the speakers too. I mean, obviously, for the AEs in the room, I mean, you want to control as much as you can, and from a staff perspective, but that's for a lot of your local leadership. It's really a great way to get them involved and the realtors involved. And if they have a great relationship with a particular county commissioner or, local mayor and stuff, say, they've really done a lot for housing, bring that mayor in, have them come talk for 20 minutes. It's just kind of a great focus for the realtors. The one key thing, and I always get this question, is no, it is not retroactive. So you cannot apply after the event is over. Say, hey, we did this really, really great event last month, and I'm going to put in the application. You can't do that, unfortunately. Sorry. So that is one question that has come up in every single state, saying, "Oh, I just did this event. Can I go submit for a $1,000 reimbursement?" It doesn't quite work like that. They're looking for, if you have other, new and innovative ways of just expanding home ownership. I mean, there are so many things that have not been done yet. So anything that's really outside the box too is a great way for NAR to kind of showcase some new ideas too. How-to videos. Somebody said DVD. There's a couple of associations that have done that. They've had realtors sit on and talk about the home buying process, from A to Z and how it works, and just the cost of producing the DVD to send out, or a CD to send out to, to hand out to home buyers. It's another thing, and it was branded by the association. So, does anybody have any other questions on housing opportunity? Yep.
When you apply for the grant, how normally, the time?
The turnaround time?
That you're going to know that you're going to get the money?
Usually within a month. Sometimes it'll be faster than that. It just depends on when the conference calls are scheduled. But we've been told within a month. So if you apply February 29th, I think most people by the end of March are going to know whether or not they've got it. So, and if you're under a fairly strict deadline, just be careful with that. I mean, plan at least a month out. If you're planning or anything at this point, it should be planned for the end of March, early, for April. I'd even caution and go for April. Okay, the last one that we'll talk about as far as the grants is smart growth. So you're doing great with the computer.
Right.
Okay, smart growth, and I don't know, nobody in Ohio actually did any smart growth grants last year. Has anybody done smart growth here at all? Oh, great.
It's been like 5 years.
That's okay, and it's changed a little bit, and now there's 3 levels, but if you don't mind, before I get into it, just what you guys did. And by the way, smart growth, different term to every state, different definition for every locality. Smart growth is what works in your community. It is not a fit little box that NAR has. In fact, it's been expanded several ways as to what you can do related to smart growth.
Well, I wish I could take the credit for it, but our local home builders association actually was on the NAR website and read all about smart growth, and the government affairs director for HBA called us, and he actually had already put together the application and everything. I didn't have to do anything. But what we did,
resources.
but what we did, he put together a bus tour of smart growth sites, 5 different types that were all throughout northeastern Ohio, that showed, and this was 5 years ago. So one of the communities was all brand new, all about green, and other, there was different aspects of smart growth. Showed just, I can't even explain exactly, but I mean, we went to 5 different sites. We marketed it to realtors, builders.
Essentially, you took a bus tour showcasing different development projects.
Yes, and they were all different types. They showcased a different part of smart growth and smart growth philosophies and that sort of thing. But it took like half of a morning, then we stopped for lunch, and then half of an afternoon. But that was our one and only in smart growth.
That's okay. So now there are, and there used to be just one level 5 years ago. There was one level, it was a $5,000 grant, that was all that existed. NAR found that there were a lot of ways that people could do different things throughout smart growth. So they actually created 3 levels. The first, and the reason why is because a lot of people were just trying to do some small educational things that really didn't fit into the $5,000 grant. NAR and any of the GADs in the room who went to the GAD Institute, I think it was last year, NAR created what's called the Smart Growth for 21st Century course. It's a course that they've created that you can apply under level 1 up to $1,500, and this is another one that is on a rolling basis. This does not fit in that 4 times a year deadline. They will come in, they have the instructor, they will come in, they will work with you, and they will help teach the course. And they will also work with you to get CE credit for it. I have no idea how CE works in Ohio, so I'm not going to even pretend to. But it's something that they can work with as far as getting credit for CE credit in Ohio. And obviously, which is a bigger draw to getting people to go for it. It's new. A lot of people are just starting to access it. It has a wide variety of topics in it from all over the country of different examples, and they do say smart growth is different in every type of community. I have actually sat through one of the courses. I found it interesting. I also come from a state that has a lot of smart growth stuff though, so it will depend. It talks about a lot of land use policies in different areas of the country. It's a great, especially if you get to eat, it's a great way for just realtors to come. It's an easy thing, again, to show $1,500 to help you put on the course, and NAR will come and pretty much do most of it for you. So that's level 1. Level 2 is the most common one that most people are aware of, and that's up to $5,000. And this one, and you can see it hopefully, to help an association, and it's for state or local, to engage in local land use issues. And again, you can work with other stakeholders, like working with your builders, your elected officials. A couple of examples, just to kind of give you an idea. And by the way, you cannot just sort of make a donation to a smart growth. You can't just take $5,000 and say, we're going to put it towards this type of group. You have to actually put on some sort of activity. One example, an association recently applied last year, and they're putting on a series of events. It's my association. I think about one association, and what we're doing is similar to what you did with the bus tour. We're putting on 4 different development project series, so educational events. We're trying to get CE credit for it. We're not sure, but there are 4 major projects in the county I live in that are all being worked on over the next 3 years, and as far as being built out, and new roads are going around it. And so we're having in the area an educational event. We're bringing in the developers, bringing in the elected officials who helped approve the project. We're bringing in planning board members who helped give the permits to move the project forward. It's mixed-use housing. We're bringing in some commercial folks as well to talk about retail. We're doing a bus tour from sort of the area, so people can kind of get out and go around it. And it was a $5,000 grant, and it's just talking about what we call smart growth projects, but they're really just development projects throughout the year. And it's 4 different events. And by bringing in the local elected officials, the reason why we're doing that is because we're actually going to be applying for a level 3 grant coming February 29th to expand on it, and I'll get to what the level 3 is after. But this is starting, it's just getting people to understand. A lot of realtors don't always have a good relationship with the development community, or not sure what the new projects are. There's a lot of revitalization going on in a lot of communities that don't have growth, and they're looking for new projects to kind of talk about, to understand what the housing that is there, what it's targeted to, what kind of demographics, is it more for teachers, is it more for, is it a livable, walkable community, as people love to say. So there's a couple of different ways to go through it. Just some other good examples for you. NAR has done, there we go. The Southeast Valley Association in Arizona, they did a $5,000 grant to fund an outreach effort, and they brought in their local elected officials to make sure that realtors were included in land use deliberations. They created what they called a smart growth benching for local governments. So the realtors had never been, in that area, had never been asked to be involved in any of the zoning processes. There are associations in their counties that are going through what's called zoning rewrites. How much local land use stuff, I'm looking at Paul and Scott, it is done in Ohio.
Local land?
Yeah. I mean, do a lot of the counties have, because that's a key thing with smart growth, do they have the ability to do, I mean, I know some of the cities do.
Yeah, they do. I would say as far as a local issue, not so much recently, but
Okay.
when I first started here, that was a big issue. We spent a lot of time with state effort through various coalitions and groups,
Okay.
putting studies together, things of that sort.
Okay. What about, I mean, do your chambers get involved in any of this stuff? I mean, you want to be talked about with the builders.
State chamber, not so much, I don't think, but the local chamber probably would.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a lot of it with smart growth. I mean, now, given the economy and new housing projects, if there are just anything in your area that you think realtors might be interested in, it's a great way of doing it. It's a great way of bringing them in. A lot of this, as you can see with the grant stuff, it's focused around a lot of educational aspects because you're getting realtors involved. The other side of it is you can put on a smart growth seminar. That's something that other ones have done, and just kind of bring in some of your planning officials and just talk about what's in the pipeline for the next couple of years. What kind of projects are they seeing being brought in some of your cities and counties? And just put on a seminar for the day and have them come and talk. And it's a way for them just to kind of see you're involved with it. So some of your eyes are glazing over on this. So does anybody have any specific questions or ideas that you think might fit into this? This is one of the harder ones out of all of them, but it's also not difficult once you have the ideas out there. Okay. Once you've done that, since everybody's kind of at lost right now, the level 3 is a $15,000 grant, and this you have had to have done a level 1 or a level 2, or you have to show NAR that you've been involved in some sort of other smart growth activity. This is up to $15,000. This one is really focused on a lot of, it doesn't have to be, but a lot of people have done it based on transportation projects. Obviously, roads is a big thing, quality of life, getting around, getting people to their housing. So one of the focuses that several have done is they've gotten involved in Citizen Transit Authority Alliance or whatever it is. And so some of the associations have gone and they've become a player in that organization, have put money towards it, and being involved in some of the conversations. Others have hired consultants. They've used them $15,000 to hire a consultant to help them with local land use issues, to understand why it's important for realtors. So you can use the money to hire a consultant. Obviously, it's on a one-time basis, but to work with certain local officials. Other ones have brought in national experts, smart growth experts. There are tons of them all over the place, but they've used the $15,000 to pay to bring in, to put on for the entire Realtor Association, brought in a national expert to come talk about what smart growth is to that community. It's been very successful. The one thing with a lot of the smart growth stuff I will tell you is it's a great way to partner for those of you who are smaller boards together, because I mean you said you cover 5 different counties, 6 counties. So if you're a smaller board though that covers that wide geographical area, if you have another board that's close to you that also, if there's any overlaps as well, it's a great way for, that's the one thing with any of these grants, don't be afraid to partner. There are 4 associations in Maryland on the Eastern Shore that have called they call themselves the Eastern Shore Coalition, and they applied for a couple of grants together to do several projects. One, obviously cost-wise, it was a lot easier to do it because of staff time, because none of them had any staff except for the AE and like an admin, somebody who was helping answer the phones. So it was an easy way for them to kind of partner together to put on a bigger event. They used the money to fund a central location that was drivable. There are several other associations. Virginia has done something very similar with some of their boards there. So think about that too. Think about partnering together on some of this. It also, then you're more likely to get a full $5,000 also.
What would be an example of using that money if you were talking about going together with 2 boards?
Well, if you're gonna put on a housing fair and you don't have the staff time to do it, and you want to put on and you want to bring in elected officials and you want to put on a 2-day seminar, and actually that's what Megan is doing, a 2-day seminar. You're doing a 2-day seminar, right? A 2-day seminar, and you want to bring in people. You're pooling your resources together. It's one program, And you'll only put in one application, but you'll have both of the associations thing on it or whatever. So it's a newer thing that NAR has talked with us about. It wasn't something people necessarily did years ago. But we had talked with Bill and I had asked actually Wendy that, especially with housing opportunity, but I've talked with Hugh Morris too on Smart Growth, and they've said they will absolutely consider that, especially for the smaller boards that just don't have the staff time to be able to do it. But if you have 2 staffers, then, and it's the same event, you're just marketing it to a broader area, to more realtors. So that's it's an easier way of doing it, and then you can kind of also get some of your local elected officials talking too, and all hearing the same realtor message. Because that's what a lot of it is with the key with a lot of this when you're putting it on is, and that's what people say, well, this isn't really public policy. It is if you add an elected official element to it, or a local planning official to it. You bring them in, even just having them say a few words, or just being a part of the day, especially with housing fairs. I'll go back to that. Having them just come, and if you hold a workshop for home buyers and having them sit in the room and hearing how difficult it is to buy a home, they're going to think twice before they put in a certain disclosure in a contract then. I mean, there are certain elements that you can do without doing an IE campaign and being directly, involved in a campaign. There's other public policy elements that you can talk with them about local land use issues. You can really push the realtor agenda that way then. Does that make sense a little bit? Other questions on Smart Growth? So just at level 3 with the $15,000, think transportation projects. Think if you have some new transportation initiatives. There are a lot of mass transit. I don't know how much mass transit you have here, but there are a lot of parts of the country that are dealing with mass transit issues and funding for the projects and how it involves realtors. And a lot of them are just holding different seminars and bringing people in to come talk about mass transit options and having the elected officials come in and talk about the projects and how it's going to move people throughout their county. So that's just one new thing, and it's a newer one. Most of you are probably not going to be looking at that one this year, but one you have to have done a level 1 or 2, but it might be something to consider next year or later in the fall if you've done one of the first ones earlier this year. So Smart Growth, it's not as complicated. I know I made it sound probably more complicated than it needs to be, but it's also one of those that it's a really easy way to partner with other organizations. That's why I asked about the local land use, your chambers, your builders. Find out what they're doing. It also helps with the staff time. If you can get them to write the application, that's awesome. That's it's a great way of doing it. But just with Smart Growth, another thing with Smart Growth is green building. Do you guys deal with a lot of stuff related to green building or energy efficiency type of issues? It's a newer section of Smart Growth. Most people go to Smart Growth, they think of land use, they think of development projects, they think of transportation. They don't think about green. It's a newer thing, and it's different everywhere too, what it fits. But if you have certain elements of, if you're dealing with any energy audit issues, you can have them come in and you can do different projects related to that. Yeah.
I'm saying that I sit on a couple different housing boards, and right now a lot of the different agencies are helping the lower income homeowners with energy audits. Would either of these greens be able to help with those initiatives, or
how would the realtors be involved with it?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
We can talk in a little more detail on that, but some of it may be educating realtors on what energy efficiency is and what an energy audit is. Having an energy audit company come in and talk, working with the nonprofit, and if there's certain things, promoting things, creating a brochure or something, from them and working with them for home buyers, or working with you said lower income buyers as to what energy audits are, helping produce some sort of brochure with the realtor brand on it as to what energy efficiency is, what it means to your home, how it, helps decrease your utility bills, anything along those. There's a couple of ways of working through that. Yeah.
Could a commercial class be included in that? Our commercial group talked about having someone come in to talk about retrofitting, like green retrofitting, and all of that kind of stuff.
Can everybody hear what she said? She's talking about could they do a class with commercial, I guess with your commercial realtors, and talking about retrofitting buildings and homes, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but yes, that absolutely applies under Smart Growth. Yep. it's a great, and something like that, you'd probably get more, you wouldn't get probably a full $5,000 grant for it, but if you did it where you took a bus tour and showed examples of what those homes are, having people showcase some homes and buildings that have done some of the retrofitting, then you could get, because you have to pay for the cost of the bus and stuff, and that's another way. So with some of the classes and stuff, what I talked about with this, throw an element in it of a bus tour or a walking tour, something like that, where you're going to up the cost and you're more likely to get the full $5,000 for it. Yeah. That's just sort of, in less than an hour, just really quick on what the grants are. Again, the applications are not hard. If you have questions, I'm happy to walk you through it. The NAR staff will walk you through it. There are tons of examples how to fill it out. And the hardest thing that people tend to find is doing the budget, which is actually probably one of the simplest ways of doing it. And we have examples of budgets of what other people have done, and we can show you as to what you could, what the cost of a facility is, what the cost of food should be, what you should charge your members if you're charging them at all, and any of that. And then how to really show what staff time means, the in-kind contribution, especially when you don't have any money to contribute to it. Does anybody have any questions on the grants? Does anybody want the deadlines again, just real quick? February 29th, May 31st, August 31st, and November 2nd. The only two that are outside of that is level 1 for both Smart Growth and Housing Opportunity on a rolling basis. And our pack is going to be different. Oh, you do have, I'm sorry. You have, okay, it's on that sheet that looked like a bunch of boxes. That actually has it on there. It also has who the staff contact is for each of them. So just to so process-wise, what it means, what you're going to do is you're going to go home after today. You're going to think about what you might want to do. You're going to call me. Let me know. I will enter it into a lovely computer system, and then we will let the NAR staff person know, and they'll send you the application, and then we'll start going through it. But it's better to, I would tell you to call me first or email me, and we can go through it. Flush out the idea. It doesn't take that long, but if there's stuff that you've already done as your association the past couple of years, you're planning this year, let's find a way for you to just get sort of the grant money for it at this point.